Welcome to the UIAAA Connection podcast. Hometown Ticketing is proud to be the exclusive sponsor of the UIAAA Connection podcast and to provide schools nationwide with the best options for digital ticketing for their events. Visit their website at hometownticketing.com to learn how they can make digital ticketing possible and simple at your school. Thank you to Hometown Ticketing for their exclusive sponsorship of the UIAAA Connection podcast.
Welcome back to another edition of the UIAAA Connection. I'm your host, Mark Hutch Hunter. Today we have a special guest, Clark Boog Stringfellow, Certified Athletic Administrator at Bountiful High School. Clark, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you for having me, Hutch. It's an honor to be here, and I've been listening to all the episodes so far, and it's provided a lot of good insight for myself and what I do.
That's excellent. So before we get into your growing up years and that type of thing, let's get this one thing out of the way. I believe I know where you got the nickname from, but because I'm a little bit older, but you need to explain to our listeners where you got the nickname Boog from. Obviously, you're a baseball guy. Maybe some of them don't remember the Orioles back in the 60s.
So I played high school sports here at Bountiful High School, and I played for Larry Wall, who was our football coach, and some other really good coaches that I'll talk about a little bit later, Aukie Evans and John Edwards, Phil Olson. And when I was playing my senior year in football, they often commented to me that I looked a lot like Boog Powell, who at the time was actually on the Miller Lite beer commercials, but he was once a great baseball player for the Baltimore Orioles organization. So they just started calling me Boog in high school, and it stuck with me my whole life. And the crazy thing is that's what I think more people know me by, that name, than my actual name. I went on a mission. They called me Elder Boog. Today I'm known at the high school by Boog more than I am my own name. Administrators across the district, our superintendent, they all know me by my nickname rather than my real name. So that's pretty much how it's just stuck with me, and I enjoy it and kind of ran with it. I added coach to it when I became a coach, and so it's been a fun little way to be known.
Well, that's excellent. I can obviously relate to that with my nickname, because I think the same is pretty much true for me. Almost everyone that knows me doesn't know me by my first name. They know me by Hutch, which is obviously how you know me, but that's probably as it should be. So, Boog, why don't you share with our listeners what it was like growing up, youth sports? Obviously, you already mentioned you went to Bountiful, where you went to college, maybe your first job, stuff like that.
Okay. Well, I'm one of the few people that have. I was born and raised here in Bountiful, Utah, just north of Salt Lake City, about 10 minutes right on the western slope of the Wasatch Range. I've only lived in 3 houses here in Bountiful. One that I was born in, one that we moved to when I was in about eight years old, and then one that I live in now. And I was fortunate to be around a lot of good quality youth programs growing up in Bountiful. I have 3 other siblings who are all a lot older than I am. My parents are still alive. They still live here in Bountiful. In fact, they live just a short distance from where I'm at now. My dad still comes to all of the games that I coach in. He's been a scorekeeper for many years. Comes and keeps score to every game I coach in right now. I was born and raised here. I went to Bountiful High. I graduated in 1987. I played for Phil Olson in baseball. Baseball was my true love. And I've also played for Larry Wall only for 1 year, just my senior year in football. Growing up, I think it was baseball was the sport that really attracted to me the most. I love baseball. I've been around it a very, very long time. I loved playing the game. I didn't really start out like being, the all-star or anything like that. I was kind of just picked up by a guy here in town by the name of Larry Jacobs, who owned a car shop called Jake's Radiator, and his car shop sponsored the team, and they were named the Braves. And he picked me up on his team and kind of mentored me along. And he was very instrumental in instilling a love for the game of baseball early on. And then from there it went to Phil Olson, who Phil passed away in 2016, but for many, many years, Phil Olson was like my second dad. He brought me along and mentored me and coached me, but not only was he my coach, but he was my friend. And he's taught me a lot of things that I know that are true today in coaching and administrating that he taught me as a teacher, that I cherish to this day. I had a really good relationship with my high school baseball coach and my high school football coach in Larry Wall. Larry and I are still very, very good friends, even though he's retired. And I see him quite often, get to visit with him and pick his brain on a few things. And so growing up in Bountiful, I pretty much just played baseball. I did golf a lot. My first couple of years of high school, I was on the golf team. I didn't even play football until my last year. I grew a little bit, and my buddies talked me into going out for football, and so I did. I played for the greatest coaching staff ever assembled: Larry Wall, Aki Evans, John Edwards, Phil Olson. They all worked together in sports, and had one of the greatest times of my life. I was very fortunate to earn a college scholarship to go to Southern Utah University. Back then it was SUSC, and both football and baseball, the programs at Southern Utah allowed me to do both. And so I went down as a skinny offensive lineman and big first baseman, and I didn't get to play much early on. I did get to travel with the football team. Baseball was a little bit different. There were others that were a lot better, a lot more skilled. Played for Bill Groves down there when he was at Southern Utah. I played for Jack Bishop when he was a head coach at Southern Utah. And I think a lot of my growing up years really helped me in college, really helped me to identify what I truly wanted to do in life. And it was definitely involved in sports.
Well, that's excellent. Let me just touch on something that one of our previous guests, Jen Whittaker, I'm sure you know her. I think she's also a Bountiful alum and coach now. She coached all those drill team championships, but if I've got my years right, she was maybe just about leaving about the time you got there, or were you classmates at all?
We weren't classmates. The funny thing about Jan is she is my wife's cousin. And so we are distantly related. Her dad and my wife's grandma are brother and sister. And so Jan and I have known each other for a long time. She's a great person and lives close by where we live. And I wasn't at school the same time she was there, but for many years I was teaching at Bountiful High School. I still am, and she was there, and I learned a lot of great lessons from her as well. She she was really hard nosed when she was a coach and a teacher. And I think a lot of those lessons are being learned now as an administrator at Bountiful High. So yeah, Jan's a great influence, a great mentor for me.
That's excellent. And then you mentioned uh, Aki Evans, and I don't know him well, but Aki Evans was a classmate of my sister's, graduated from Highland back in '69. We have that connection. Plus, one of my former students, I think, was a former assistant coach of yours, Trevor Amicone,
Yes,
who was
yes,
a
Trevor.
player at Jordan and one of your assistants, I think, back when one of the championships you won.
Correct. Trevor. Well, going back to Aki's dad is named Aki, and he was the equipment manager at the University of Utah for many, many years. And Aki went to Highland High School, and Aki got into coaching through Larry Wall, who was also at Brighton High School at the time. Larry started at Brighton. Aki was there with him at Brighton. And then when the job came open at Bountiful, they both migrated to Bountiful and have been there, pretty much been there ever since. Trevor Amicone joined our baseball program. I've been the head coach at Bountiful, the head baseball coach. I just finished my 25th year as the head baseball coach at Bountiful High School. And I believe it was in 2013, Trevor Amicone was a part-time seminary teacher at Bountiful with the Bountiful High LDS Seminary. And he approached me about, helping out a little bit. And by the next year, he kind of did it part-time in 2013. 2014, he was on my staff, full-time staff member, very instrumental for our team. He was a really good coach and really knew the game well. And he helped us construct a really good baseball team in 2014, where we went on to win the 4A state championship that year with a lot of really good multi-sport athletes. And I think that's about the last Northern Utah team to win a state baseball championship was us. And since then, it's pretty much been South Salt Lake County and Utah County. So yeah, Trevor's a really good coach, and he went on to be a head coach at Woods Cross High School the very next year. And the thing I remember about Trevor, though, is I remember more his mom, because early when I was coaching at Bountiful, we came out and played Jordan High. I think
She
you
was
were
the
still
head baseball coach.
and she was the head baseball coach
Sure.
at Jordan High, and she her team beat us, and they were really good. And I took some gruff from some of my fellow coaching friends for going out and getting beat by Mary Kay Amico. But Mary Kay is an excellent coach. It doesn't matter what she's coaching; she's an excellent coach. So that's where I kind of I think I was her first win as a head baseball, when she was our head baseball coach. So, but she was excellent coach.
Absolutely. Well, yeah, that's boy, it's a small world in the world of athletics. Now, you mentioned a few of your mentors. You want to mention any more before we continue that maybe it helped you out? I know you've already mentioned a couple, but.
Well, I think the one person I haven't mentioned much is my dad. My dad was a heck of an athlete himself in high school. He went to the old BY Academy, Brigham Young Academy. I think my dad's 88 years old this year, and he excelled in sports in high school. Was a football running back, was a catcher in baseball. He actually made the BYU baseball team out of high school, but had to quit because he had to help provide food for his family. His dad was a rancher, and both my parents grew up in Provo, so their roots are in Provo. My mom's brother, you might know the name of Paul Kitchen. Paul Kitchen is my mom's brother, and so Paul Kitchen was a great mentor for me early on in my coaching career, and learned a lot from him and from his accolades at American Fork High School and some of the things that he was able to accomplish. Um, also, Phil Olson was definitely one of my very closest friends. Spent a lot of time with him, and we still today at Bountiful High we have the Phil Olson Memorial Scholarship that we give away to an outstanding young man who happens to play baseball at Bountiful High. We've done it each of the last 6 years and give a little monetary award. We fundraise and then we give back, and that's something that we really enjoy doing is presenting that award in Phil's honor and have his family come back and be there on the field with us when we do it. We named the field Phil Olson Field several years ago, and it's been a great honor to be part of that legacy. All my high school coaches were incredible mentors for me, and they were and even better, they were friends. And even after I got done playing and was their colleague, they treated me as a friend, and I was included in their lives. Still to this day, I'm included in their families' lives, and that's really what this is all about.
Excellent answer. Thank you for sharing that. Let me ask you this, Boog. What's the one thing you wish you had known when you began your career?
I wish I would have known that relationships with people are more important than rules, regulations, strategies, skill. That's the one biggest thing that I've learned over the years, is that you develop a relationship of trust with your athletes and with your coaches and with your administrators and your secretaries and your custodians and everybody else that's involved in this big process. But the relationship is with that you carry with them and that you build with them is the most important part of this job. There's going to be times when you're going to have positive things happen, and there's going to be a lot of times when a lot of negative things happen. But I think it's the relationship that you have with them that makes up the difference. And early on in my career, I was all about, toe the line, be disciplined. And, I didn't demonstrate very good coaching ethics early on in my coaching career. I'd get frustrated a lot. I think I emulated a little bit of the coaches that I grew up with, but that that necessarily wasn't the way they coached. That was the way they reacted to certain things. They're the relationship I built with my high school coaches is everlasting. And so the thing that I see that I wish I'd have done better early on is just build better relationships with people and not worry so much about strategy or discipline or whatever.
Great answer. Thanks for sharing that with our audience. Let me ask you, what's been your biggest failure and what did you learn from it?
Well, as an AD, that something I've learned is that failures happen almost daily, and there's two things I want to make sure that I never fail again on, and that is always making sure that I meet the deadlines of the UIAAA with regards to honoring kids, whether it be academic all-state or all-state recognition or whatever sacrifice you got to make for kids to make sure that they're recognized is extremely important. I think there was one year I missed out on that, and I took a lot of heat for that, and I feel bad because that's something that kids deserve when they earn those accolades. So I think just making sure that I'm on top of everything that I have to do. I keep, I used to be a big Franklin Day Planner user. I used to write everything down. I learned that on my mission. And then, technology kind of came and now technology has evolved. I've had to go back to writing things down again because there's so much going on in an athletic administrator's life that sometimes I get lost in that translation between paper and pencil and iPhone, and it's always good to have a backup plan. So when I have a date that I need to write down, I put it on my phone and I put it in my planner just so that I know that I'm prepared for that meeting. So I think early on, the biggest failure that I experienced was just not paying attention to the details that had the biggest outcomes.
Well, let me ask you, how long have you been the athletic director at Bountiful?
Well, when Kelly Anderson, who's the athletic director at Syracuse, left Bountiful High, he the administrator that we had by the name was Rick Astle, who used to be at Layton High, and now he's a district superintendent. He kind of turned the AD job over to Larry Wall, and Larry Wall said, "There's no way I can do this without Boog's help." So we did it together. And this was probably 15, 16 years ago when Syracuse High opened up. And so Larry and I just did it. We tag teamed it. And the funny part of it was I did all the work and he got all the glory. We shared the pay. We shared the time that they gave us. But he was a manager of people, and he still is, and he's really good at it. And I was a manager of things, and I took a lot of pride. As a teacher, I taught business classes, computer classes, and digital literacy and stuff like that. So I've been really well off on the computer for many years, and so when you had to have things done, I got them done, and then Larry got the credit for it. But we laugh at that. But when we had problems, Larry dealt with problems, and I dealt with files. And then when Larry left, when he retired 3 years ago, I took over as the sole AD at the school, and have been able to really learn a lot in these last 3 years about the job, and getting involved with ADEC and the UIAAA, the NIAAA, and the UHSAA has been monumental in my progressions the last 3 to 4 years.
Then how has the job of athletic administrator changed from when you first started 16 years ago to where it is today?
Well, I think the biggest change obviously is technology and the computer. It's really important that you're well schooled in the use of a computer and the internet and phones, technology itself. The job is it's big. I'll be honest, it's a big job. And it's not something I think any school should take lightly. I think we at Bountiful took it kind of lightly for a number of years, and we kind of just got the bare minimum done. We didn't really push, getting, involved in anything. We just kind of just did what was required, and that's it. And ever since I've been solo, I've learned that we did a lot of things wrong, and I've been trying to make up for that and try to just give better attention to things that didn't really matter, or at least that we didn't think they mattered when we first started. And now those are the biggest things, especially the coach's certification and the eligibility of athletes.
Sure. Well, I want to talk about two things that happened to you at Bountiful this year that probably don't happen just one time to an AD, but they happen twice in the same year to you. The first one is, I remember talking to you on the phone the week that this happened, is you had a football game televised by one of the local stations here. And we had a big windstorm, and it blew at least one of the posts down, or maybe two. And then, of course, you had a game 2 days later. And why don't you share with our audience that little adventure, because that had to be a huge headache.
That was mind-boggling to see how strong Mother Nature really could be. And we did, our light towers were already kind of in a failing stage. They weren't very well inserted or built. Bountiful High is a school that's a lot older than many of the other schools along the Wasatch Front. And some of our infrastructure in our football stadium was pretty ancient. And the powerful windstorms that we had in September of 2020 literally blew our southeast tower completely down. In fact, I was there. Well, I wasn't there. I was there right after it had blown down with some workers that were working on the cell tower. So they actually witnessed it fall, and they caught it on video. And it was amazing, absolutely amazing to see something so big and powerful just come down like that. The same tower on the north side was teetering. It was about ready to come down as well. And here we are supposed to play Woods Cross, our biggest rivalry, 3 days later on TV. And I don't know what we're going to do. I remember calling you and asking you, like, who do I call? You know, and you were very helpful in helping me find, you know, the right people to call. And we were scrambling. We didn't know what to do. We were out of school because the wind had shut the schools down. And to make a long story short, we ended up cutting the other two towers down as well, because they were affected by that.
They were next on the list.
Yeah. And so we ended up playing the game that week, but we played it during the daytime and it wasn't on TV. And that was one of the hardest calls I've ever had to make, was to Dave Fox of Channel 2 and tell him,
Sure.
hey, we can't host. And they tried to have us go over there. And I'm just like, we can't take this kind of a game of this magnitude to an opponent's field. And we tried to get temporary lighting. It just didn't work. So we continued for the rest of the season playing all of our home games during the daytime at 3:30 in the afternoon.
Mm-hmm.
And the one thing that is nice about playing a 3:30 game is you're done at 7.
Right.
And you have the rest of your night off. As an athletic director, you don't see that very often. You can actually go home and have dinner with your wife.
It's true enough.
And so that was one good thing. The bad thing was it was hot. And we did get good crowds during the day, but it was still hot. And that was hard. We still have a grass football field. Mm-hmm. We're one of the only schools on the Wasatch Front that does not have turf yet. We still have good old-fashioned grass, and until that ever gets changed, we're going to be grass. We are putting in they are putting in lights for this fall, so we will get back to having lights, which will be nice. But yeah, that was I've never seen anything like that. And when you come up to our field now, I tell people, I say, look at our lights on our football field. And they'll look over there and they're like, there aren't any. I'm like, yep, they're not. So it was crazy.
That's the irony of the situation here for me. Back when I played at Highland in the late 60s and the early 70s, we were in a league with Bountiful and East Highland, Skyline, Davis. All of our games were in the afternoon except for Davis or Bountiful. And you never had Davis or Bountiful on the road during the same year. So you got one night game a year. It was either at Davis or it was at Bountiful. And of course now everybody have lights. So let me go to the second part of that question about Bountiful. You went through the changing of the mascot, or I guess that's the best way to put it. Describe that situation for our audience.
Well, I think 2020 threw a lot of wrenches in our society, and it caused a lot of people to start thinking about sensitive topics. And I think it's opened our eyes to a lot of new ways of thinking. We've always been, for the last 71 years, have been known as the Bountiful Braves. We've taken a lot of pride in our mascot, the Braves. There have been times, however, when students, students or adults, took the name a little too far into Native American culture or Native American heritage. And I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that they just weren't educated on why some of those practices of either dressing up like a Native American in a costume or wearing a headdress or painting your face or whatever was not an appropriate action to participate in. And so, just with the whole movement of society and the way we think and the way we do things in this last year, it caught wind that some people very opposed and kind of how do I want to put it? They were opposed and they were dissatisfied with the name of Braves as our mascot, to the point where it became very confrontational. And we our principal, that's the last thing he wanted to do, was change the school's mascot. But he listened and formed a group of listeners to have hearings, so to speak, or ways for people to come in and express their opinion. And he listened, and it was a tough decision for him. It wasn't a sole decision, but it was a tough decision for him. And I think I'm a Brave. I will always be a Brave. And if there's anybody at our school right now that is more brave than me, I challenge him to a match in whatever.
Mm-hmm.
I'm as brave as there is, but I also understand the plight that he was in and the situation that he was in, and I agree with what he had to do. I don't like it, and neither does he, but it's what needed to be done to appease the many naysayers that were against the name. And so I told him, I said, his name's Aaron Hogue. I said, Aaron, I'm very against this, but I have your back. And I told him I had his back. And as his AD, I think he needed to hear that. And I said, I will accept whatever decision you make, and we will move forward. And he had to make a tough decision to discontinue our Braves mascot, which was, as of last week, we're no longer the Bountiful Braves. And then the process of coming up with a new mascot was even more discombobulating, just because there's so many different thoughts and theories of what you needed to do. And I think we really came up with a really good mascot that describes the heritage of our city. The new mascot is the Red Hawks, and we've actually seen some Red Hawks that are flying in Bountiful. We really did our homework with this. We hired a local digital graphics firm to come in and help us with this and help us find some Bountiful heritage into this. And we were able to use the mountain range. I'll show you a graphic sometime of how we were able to incorporate the mountain range east of our school into our new logo, which is really neat. So we are the Bountiful Red Hawks as of right now, and we're going through a complete rebranding process, which is a big giant pain in the rear. And we our district's been very supportive, and they're funding it.
Well,
And
that's good.
so we're not having to pull monies from places that we don't have monies in to pay for this, but we're getting new uniforms and new logos and new
The
shirts.
whole deal. Well,
Whole deal.
thank you for sharing both those stories. Had to be, like I said, to have one of those come up in a year, it would be something. And you had them both in the same year. I want you to share with our audience, both in Utah and nationally, your experience now as a in the UIAAA. We scholarship a couple of ADs, at least a couple every year, to go to the NIAAA conference. I want you to speak to that experience and about how that has changed your outlook and your view as an athletic director. Just that that first time going to the national conference.
So let me compare it to being a baseball coach. As a baseball coach, I went to my first ABCA, American Baseball Coaches Association convention about 10 or 15 years ago. It was one of the greatest experiences of my life. I learned so much more about how to be a better coach, a better baseball coach than I ever thought I would in one setting. I made it a goal to try and return every year since then. Haven't been to all of them, but I've been to a lot of them. Been able to go to some great places, some cities, and learn about the game of baseball from people around the country. So when I kind of took over as the AD full time at Bountiful, um, I was asked by our region to serve on the ADEC committee, which is the athletic directors executive committee, and I was really excited about that. And I love being part of that committee. It has been such a great experience to learn how the inner workings of athletic administration works within our state high school activities association, and then to learn about certification. Our I think Hutch, you sent out notices to all the superintendents about who was certified in their district. Our superintendent caught wind of that, made it immediately mandatory that everybody does it. I jumped on it. My principal jumped on it. He helped me pay for it. He helped me get certified. And I think I'm still the only one in Davis District to be at least a CAA at this point right now. And it was a great experience. Then to add on top of that, to go to have the opportunity to earn a scholarship to help me pay for the trip to National Harbor, which was a great place, a great venue to go to. Right before COVID hit, thankfully we were able to go. That was just the cream of the crop. It was such a great experience back there. So many new opportunities to meet people from our own state and hang out with them and see them in a different limelight. It was awesome. The classes were second. They were so good. I learned more about sports law and everything I'm doing wrong in those sports law classes that I'm grateful I took them, because I'm a lot more cognizant of what I need to do as an AD and what I need to teach our coaches to do in terms of law and in terms of what's good and what's bad, all because of those classes. I just literally ate up. I was a sponge. I was a knowledge sponge at that conference, and it was so good. And that's where I tested and earned my CAA back there, and I was really nervous that I was going to fail.
We all are.
I spent more time networking with people and taking classes than I did studying for that test. And I ended up doing okay, and I ended up passing, but it was a great experience. And I feel so bad that, the Tampa Bay one was canceled. I was looking forward to that. I had plans to go, but it's on my list of things I need to do every year and plan for, and make sure that we have the monies for me to do that. incredible experience. Absolutely, just it was the bomb. It was
Well,
cool.
let me finish up with a couple of questions. The first one would be, if you had two suggestions for a brand new athletic director, by brand new I mean between 1 and 4 years, two suggestions that these are things that you must do in order to be successful, what would those be?
Number one, I would make sure that you are very. I would make sure that you go to games, go to contests, go to practices, and make an appearance and show up and visit and talk. Don't go to try and one up anybody or try to be bigger than anybody else. Just go and support them. That's huge. As a coach, when I see an administrator at one of my games and I tell my guys that, hey, there's somebody here to watch you guys play, it's a different atmosphere. And so I think being present at games and practices is a big one. And then just making sure that relationships trump priorities and skills and rules. I mean, rules are important, but relationships are more important. And just make sure that your coaches know that you care for them and you love them and that you're there for them and you've got their back and that you're going to do whatever it takes to help them be successful.
Well said. Boog, what question should I have asked you that I failed to ask you?
Dang, I thought about that question just a little bit and I did. You didn't ask me anything about my family.
Well, then share some quick stories about your family before
my family,
we sign off.
My wife, I don't know if you remember the name Don Perkins.
Mm-hmm.
He was the principal of Bountiful High. That's my wife's grandpa. And my wife is the oldest grandchild to Don Perkins. Don Perkins just passed away in this last February. But Bountiful High has a huge legacy of family at that school. And I'm the tail end of it. Don Perkins, his daughter, Sue Bayless, was an administrator there for many years. Jan Whittaker, their cousin, was a coach there, and me. And I've been there for 27 years. And so we have a real family atmosphere at Bountiful High School. And I've only been at two schools. I started at a junior high, and then came to Bountiful the next year, and I've been here ever since. And I'm glad I'm there. It was really good. My wife is also a school teacher, so we get to share a lot of war stories together. And she's been super supportive. My boys played baseball for me, was on my state championship team, both of my sons. My oldest son was our first baseman, and my second son, younger son, was a sophomore pitcher. And my daughter just recently graduated from Bountiful High, and she played volleyball at the high school. So our whole family graduated from Bountiful High School, which is my wife included, which is what I think is really cool.
Well, that's excellent. Thank you for sharing that family side of things. That's kind of a special thing. That kind of wraps it up for this edition of the UIAAA Connection. Once again, our guest has been Clark Boog Stringfellow, Certified Athletic Administrator. For our listeners, we hope you turn in next week for another edition of the UIAAA Connection. Boog, thanks for being with us today.
Thanks, Hutch. Appreciate all you do.